At the moment, I don't think it will last, but to me, the image that will, or the thing, the object that sums up the war for me, in a sense, is not a tactic itself, but a reaction to a tactic, which is these concrete blast walls that once we never saw, these huge, ugly blocks in all sorts of shapes, but that have become, that are all over Kabul, all over Baghdad, all over all these cities in places that have seen violence, but also elsewhere now, around every embassy, around the Houses of Parliament, around these kind of proliferation of these great, ugly concrete blocks, which are there as a defence against suicide bombing. That, for me, is watching this extension of the blast wall across so much of the Islamic world and beyond that has marked the extent of the conflict. It's also marked, in a sense, its recent retreat over the last few years, because some of them are going now. I think one of the strongest things, looking back, that you can now say was wrong, was the great fear that possessed so many people in the West, particularly, immediately after the 9/11 attacks and in the middle of the decade, around 2004, 5 and 6, when things did look very, very dark, when there were bombs going off across much of Europe, when there were riots in France, there was the cartoons crisis, Iraq was going very badly, violence in Afghanistan was beginning to climb again, and there was a genuine fear of some kind of global conflict. Not the sort of conflict we actually saw, which in many ways was relatively limited in terms of its impact on our societies, but something much, much more intense. And looking back, you can now see, actually, that anxiety was never really justified, and that, in a sense, Al-Qaeda had failed in its key purpose of radicalising and mobilising hundreds of millions of Muslims much earlier than many in the West thought. And that, I think, is the key element that when you step back and you look at the 10 years as a whole, you see most clearly.